The International Air Transport Association has projected a $1.5 billion loss for African airlines in 2022. That is down from a $1.9 billion loss in 2021. The body says that the projected improvement is built on the expectations of some recovery in intra-Africa travel and travel to some touristic destinations with relatively higher vaccination rates. Nseko, founder and publisher, Airspace Africa, joined us on more.
IATA's latest projections for the industry, and bear in mind that this is an ever-changing number because the industry is currently a bit unpredictable. But IATA projecting that the airline industry will actually lose about $52 billion for the current year, 2021, and projecting about $12 billion in losses for 2022. Now, if you look at the numbers going back to 2020, which was definitely the worst year in aviation history, the industry lost about $138 billion after IATA revised its figures, which turned out to be even worse than had been thought. So from 138 billion to 52 billion for 2021 to 12 billion for 2022 suggests that definitely there is some form of a recovery that is happening in the industry. It's not happening as quickly as everyone would like to, but there's definitely positive signs. Currently, the passenger air transport industry is only showing a demand of about 40% for passenger air travel. You know, the appetite is still very low for travel, and it's currently being largely driven by the domestic air transport markets across the world. So at 40% of that demand, the demand that we have, about 73% actually is coming from domestic air travel, and only about 22% in demand for 2021 from international traffic. So therein lies the problem. The international air travel is lagging behind very much, and this is largely because of the restrictions in cross-border travel and the sluggishness, especially in the developing world with the vaccination programs that are currently going on. IATA does expect that if we accelerate vaccination across the world, we'll also see some bit of a faster recovery. But the challenges are also very much regulatory and on a government level, because we need our governments to be a little bit more coordinated in terms of the restrictions and the protocols for crossing borders.
Yeah, Derek, actually, the numbers, as you said, they are a breath of fresh air. And, you know, it's very hopeful knowing that airline financial performance is expected to recover in all regions by 2022. And in North America, it is expected to actually turn to profitability by next year. I mean, what that leaves the question of what about the continent? You know, what are the prospects?
Yeah, the prospects for the continent. Remember, Africa's aviation industry only makes up about 3% of the global air transport industry. It's still not very significant, but it remains important to Africa's economy. When we look at IATA came out, I think last month or 2 months ago, and gave a projection for the industry losses for this year. The industry is estimated to have already lost about 5 billion in revenues for the half year 2021. And AFRA is the African Airlines Association is estimating about 8 billion in lost revenue for the full year 2021. Now, if you compare that to 2020, that is about 2020, the industry lost 10 billion in revenue. So it's just about 2 billion in revenue that has changed. So that really suggests that Africa, the recovery in the African continent, plus the rest of the world, Africa is moving very, very slowly. I think this is the most complicated area of the air transport industry globally. And it's now also the slowest region in terms of vaccination. It's the most restrictive in terms of cross-border travel. So when it comes to the recovery of the air transport industry, we expect Africa's recovery to happen slower, and it is happening slower. We also have less of domestic air transport sectors in Africa than the rest of the world. So for Africa to recover, it's driven by the domestic side, and also IATA expects intra-African travel as well to improve. But the worst area is the intercontinental, international travel. That is where we really face challenges. But our governments need to come on board in order to adopt more streamlined protocols and to relieve the industries of the challenges it's currently facing. Otherwise, we're in very much big trouble.
Cargo, it seems to have recovered above 2019 levels, and it is expected to be going strong in 2022. Is this where the hope for the aviation players here on the continent lies?
Yes, I think the hope is still distant, but the industry is very much still in a mess, and the industry is struggling. You only have to look around you. Just 2 days ago, Air Seychelles entered administration. You know, they're in a form of bankruptcy protection right now. We've had airline failures in Africa already. We lost Air Namibia. You know, Malawian was in trouble as well. And just in South Africa, we had more than one airline that entered business rescue. Air Zimbabwe is undergoing reconstruction, and they just came out of their own form of business rescue. So the signs are that the effects are huge, and we still have a lot to do in order to rescue. The industry is still facing an existential crisis, and we could still have airline failures this year and even next year if we do not take drastic measures.
Yeah, I mean, just you've touched on different airlines here on the continent. We're seeing that Uganda Air has actually started new flights going to Dubai, tapping into the UAE market. We're also seeing Kenya Airways started leasing 2 planes to Congo Carrier. We're also seeing Kenya Airways as well slashed some of the fares to different destinations by 30%. We're seeing the airlines are trying their best to stay afloat. You know, looking at the other airlines, are these more or less the steps that they are going to be taken?
Yes, largely what this crisis means is that airlines need to reinvent themselves, and they also need to change their behaviors around working together as opposed to merely competing. So you've seen this trend of airlines around Africa getting into all sorts of partnerships. We've seen a lot of them happening in the southern part of Africa. The likes of Airlink, Same Air is sealing partnerships with Gulf carriers. We've seen Kenya Airways partnering up with Airlink, which is, by the way, the largest airline at the moment in Southern Africa, took over South African Airways. And as we saw Kenya Airways as well getting into a partnership with Congo Airways recently. And these are the kinds of partnerships, and this is the kind of business that is going to drive the survival of the industry going forward. So it's good to see that a number of African airlines have come around to the fact that we need to work together in order to solve our current challenges. And that is definitely going to be the theme going forward for the industry to survive.